Call to order the Wright County Board of Adjustments for June 21st, 2024. First order on the agenda are the minutes to last month's meeting for May 31st. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Any changes or corrections?
Yeah, I'd like to make a change to the Kayla Jones minutes. I had, my statement was left out, make line H, where I said make an opportunity to work with staff and on impervious. I'd like to see 25%, excuse me.
So noted. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve them with that adjustment.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second them.
Second it. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. All right. Aaron, could you get us started?
All right, first item on the agenda, we have the Kayla Jones request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please step forward and state your first and last name for the record?
Kayla Jones.
All right, I'll give a brief little overview quick, and then I'll pass it back to the board. So this request, it's located at 5147 53rd Street Southwest in Marysville Township. The property is 0.44 acres, zoned urban rural transition, and located on Little Waverly Lake, which is classified as recreational development. The request to construct a 12-foot by 24-foot deck onto the existing home, that would be 65.3 feet from the ordinary high water of the lake, with a total of 30.1% impervious surface coverage, was continued from the May 31st meeting so that the applicant could reassess the plans and try and reduce the impervious surface coverage to 25%. The updated request is to construct the same 12-foot by 24-foot deck onto the existing home. That would be 65.3 feet from the ordinary high water of the lake, with a total of 26.7% impervious surface coverage. A variance is required to construct a deck onto the existing home 65.3 feet from the ordinary high water of a recreational development lake because there's a 100-foot setback. A variance is also required for the impervious surface coverage anytime you're over 25% because that is the maximum. The existing impervious surface coverage is 30%, and there was a variance granted in 1988 that did allow a new home no closer than 75 feet from the lake. At that time, there was no indication of a deck or on their plans or in the meeting minutes. As part of this request, the township did approve because the deck would not be any closer to the lake than the current footprint of the existing patio. Neighbors on the lake have other variances. The addition of the deck would not obstruct anyone's view of the lake, and it would have no change in the water runoff for the lake. Neighbor, they did not see any problem with the request. They mentioned there is a patio door with no deck, which doesn't make sense, which you can see in the photo. Another neighbor commented that they approve of the request. So that will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything to wish to add?
I don't think so. I think in the type on the bottom right, I'm proposing to remove 661 square feet of that impervious surface, so half the bottom deck, and then the everything in blue, removing that, so it gets me down to that 26%. Was hoping you guys would be okay with that.
Well, we'll discuss that.
Yeah.
All right, if there's nothing else, what I'll do is I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone in the public that has any questions or concerns? If you do, please step forward. I'm not seeing anyone, so we'll take this conversation up to the board. And Dan, can you get us started?
Did we make any changes or anything from the last meeting? I mean, we were at 26.7, so we're still at the 26.7.
So the last meeting I was at 30. I didn't have any plans to take away any of my hard surfaces, and I was at 30, and you guys said you need to reduce that. So then I talked to my surveyor, I talked what I could remove, and that's what got me down to the 26.
Okay.
So that's what I'm here again, is 26 acceptable, or is it not acceptable?
I mean, as far as putting the deck on and going over the top and looking at your survey, there's not a lot more you can do without removing your house.
That's why I was hoping 26 is okay.
I mean,
I didn't put any of it there.
You're already removing part of the patio,
Yeah.
correct?
Correct, half of it.
Yep, removing half the patio.
Yep.
Get that back into soaking away. The paver patio down by the lake you're removing,
Correct.
along with the steps
Yep, and that
and
little.
walkway.
Yep,
So about the only thing left down there is the shed,
yeah.
and the rest of it is
Retain-
basically retaining walls,
Correct.
holding things back and
And they're
holding the
boulder.
property back.
Yep,
And your driveway is the width. So there, it's getting to the point, there's not anything else we can do. And I guess looking at it for me, putting a deck over the patio that's existing, we're not creating any more runoff. We're still within 65 feet. I don't like that we're not at 25%. That is a challenge for me. So I guess I'll see what the rest of you have to say.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Yeah, likewise, the 25 is tough. Looks like you tried to work with us. I think it's better than the alternative of leaving it like it is at 30, so I think I can kind of go along with it, but I'd like to see what the rest of the board says.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Russ?
And it looks, that you did about as best you can, I mean, other than redesign the whole thing again, but, yeah, I'm fine with what you did, yeah.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
I see you removed 3.4%. I was hoping for 5% reduction in your impervious surface. What about the paver patio by the chimney? Tell me, what's that like? Is that ground level? What's that like?
it's not ground level, it's up a little bit, it's probably up like this far, that just, well, actually, it's more than that. You step down one step onto the patio, and then you have to take 2 steps down onto the yard, and I have a door there. I couldn't really probably reduce it. It would have to probably be all of it, and then just do a couple steps down from that door.
Do we have a picture of that or not? No.
I mean,
assessor
I
photo.
probably have a picture on my phone, but like, I'd have to
Well,
look
let's see
for
what,
it.
if you do, see if you can find
Okay.
it. And while I,
From an assessor perspective, they've got this one, which you can kind of see the chimney. It does not help
Yeah,
for what the ground level looks
the
like.
mound
And then
is
this is the
there.
one we're already using for the PowerPoint.
sure. Likewise, the 65 feet from the lake, this board has done others. The only thing is, boy, this board has really held tight to that 25% in the past, and I can only think of maybe one for sure, maybe 2 that come to mind that we've been over that 25%. If that paver patio is there because of a grade issue or something like that, and I'm not sure she could reduce another, 2%. Another 2% would be, be 100 and some square feet. And I don't think that patio that I'm talking about would be 100 square feet, and even if she completely removed it. So then we're looking at her driveway and whether it's gravel or asphalt, or in this case pavers, it's still a hard surface. The only thing that probably could be, and the shed probably doesn't make up that 100 square feet of impervious surface either. So it's kind of a tough spot. Well, the shed is 100 square feet, 140, but, I guess, I can see your hardship, and I'll let you,
Okay.
your turn.
Thank you, Bob. Yeah, I think my feelings been expressed by everyone here. I think what Dan said too, you worked with us, the board, you did the best you could to reduce it. But with that said, what the other Dan said too, it's pretty serious. 25% is what we held a long time. So it's not an easy decision, but I can go along with the variance. With that said, can I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the, let me get to that page. I have to change pages. I'll make a motion to approve the plan as presented with a 12-foot by 24-foot deck with 26.7% impervious surface coverage. And do a as-built submitted prior to building the permit. Final indication impervious amount. Site plan noted as Exhibit A and building plans exhibited B.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second it? Any discussion?
I would like to make one point too, just for everybody's, we have in the past had some where they reduced significantly from 30 as existing down to that point, so that's what kind of made me, okay, so.
So noted, thank you. All right, hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
I'm gonna oppose.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
So I'll just clarify too, kind of for the min's sake. So they approved the updated site plan, which is the one showing the 26.7%, and then they did condition that on an as-built survey. So that was what we discussed prior, which is verifying that you're actually brought back down to that 26.7%.
Okay, so do I?
Yep, after, you can apply for the building permit. You're good right now. We can discuss everything after.
Okay,
If
perfect.
there's any questions. So, perfect.
Okay, thanks for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you.
All right, Aaron?
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Ryan Erickson request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please step forward and state your first and last name?
My name is Ryan Erickson with Erickson's Home Design.
All right, I'll give a quick overview. So this request, it's located off of Newcomb Avenue Southwest in Cokato Township. The property is 1.1 acres, zoned urban rural transition, and located on Cokato Lake, which is classified as recreational development. The request is to construct a new home within the bluff, which was continued from the May 31st meeting so that a site inspection could be conducted on June 14th. The proposed request did not change from the one presented at the last meeting. A variance is still required to construct the home within the bluff impact zone, and within the 30-foot top of bluff setback. The proposed home would be inside of all three of those areas. The Planning Commission approved the subdivision in 1987, and the bluff standards that are being applied today were introduced into the ordinance in 1992. The township recommended that a site inspection would be conducted and noted they'd provide some additional recommendation once their site inspection was complete. I believe based on the timing of their meetings, everything like that, they weren't able to submit like another formal township response form, but two of the township supervisors were at that site inspection. The city of Cokato has no issues with the request, and that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add?
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you. What I'll do is I'll open it up to the public for any questions, concerns. If you could just step aside for a moment and.
Good morning.
Morning.
Dan Bravender, Chairman, Cokato Township. I guess there's a couple things to start with, and the first part is, it is a difficult area. We realize that. I think that with a good design, which I believe this is, it's gonna be a lot better served for Cokato Lake. I'm a big proponent of property owners being able to do what they want to on their property, but I'm also a proponent of saving the lake. Wright County has some of the worst lakes in the state, and I want to make sure that that's preserved or made better. Secondly, I do like the design of the septic mound system. If you look, remember at the site inspection where that mound is going, there's quite a deep depression on the bank there where it's pulling it away from the road. And eventually we're gonna have to do something with it to try to maintain that road. We just spent $250,000 on that road rebuilding it, and we don't want it to be compromised in any way. We think that the property will be well served with this site plan. I am concerned about trees. I want trees to remain on the property because that helps to keep everything in place. So that's a big issue for me. So in the development phase, I want to make sure those trees are, unless they're needed to be moved out for the design, or for the build, that they be kept in place. And as always, Cokato Township is willing to help out in any way we can to aid the county in what, if you want us to keep an eye on things through the building phase, we will. We're always there. I think we keep an eye on things pretty close. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public have any questions, concerns? Seeing none, we'll pass this conversation up to the board. Dan?
Yeah, thank you. I wish there wouldn't have been so many mosquitoes that I could have really.
I know, yeah, I tried my best to get them out of there, but
It did have it staked out well. Looking at it, I just felt like we're just pushing the edge of that, and I thought from looking at it, we could move that more closer to the road, the house.
Sure.
And maybe, I hate to shrink a garage, but pull it all out of there so you're not right on the edge of the steep cliffs. I thought we were too close on there.
okay.
But with that being said, I hate to change your plan, but I think the garage it might just be too stretched out into that little area. Might be too big a house for that little spot.
Are you seeing the width of the garage or the,
The width.
Okay,
Kind of
sure.
pushes the house down in there into steeper inclines. So,
okay,
I know we don't like to do on a berm,
right,
but I understand that it's been changed since since that property is developed. So I'd like to see what the rest of the board has to say on it. And
okay,
so I'm not definite on any one way, so.
okay.
Thank you, Dan. Russ?
I never made it out on the site inspection, but what I've read and look at the elevation, the way the slope is, it's a tough lot. I mean, maybe you just got to redesign it completely. Because I've seen houses sitting on bluffs and in bluffs, and it costs a lot of money to fix them and then hold them there. And I don't think this is the house for that lot. That's all I got to ask.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
I was on the site inspection. And when we look at where the bluff line is, where the top of the bluff is, the top of the bluff goes right up to the road. And we're supposed to be 30 feet from the top of the bluff, which would, in this case, would actually put the house on the other side of the road. There's 18% at the minimum, most of the way down the hill until it gets steeper. Practically, yes, I believe you can build a house in there. But when we start looking at why we have rules and how the rules apply, you're not asking to be, within the bluff setback. You're trying to be in the bluff. And if we're going to allow this, then why do we have bluff rules at all? Because even the septic system is going to be in the bluff zone. So it's not even just the building, the septic system, the house, the garage. You're going to have to do some very, where the pump tank is there, you're going to have to somehow, I don't know, I suppose the hose could reach from the driveway perhaps, but it's just not the lot. This is a camper lot, not a house lot. The people that bought this know that when they bought it, the house next door, it had that flat area to the north, had that flat area, and a house got built in there, and I can see that. But this one, the bluff comes right up to the road. I can't. I can't. There's just too much hill there. There's a spot there that you could park a camper, but I can't with my vote for this. I'm a no.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Dan?
I have some strong challenges with it too. The township's asking to preserve the lake and clean up the lake. We're gonna have to remove trees. any way you look at it. Trees are gonna have to get removed, vegetation is gonna get removed. Right now, it's protecting the lake. I mean, the vegetation, the trees, it rains down onto it, it's stopping the flow. That parcel, I don't know where you could, and I was looking for some place to be able to put a rain garden. You know, where can we come in to filter water and before we dump it into the lake? This particular property is going right straight down to the lake. I mean, it just does. I don't know how we could do that. And I'm also going back in past years and what we've dealt with bluffs here and what we've allowed in bluffs and what we've allowed on top of bluff setbacks, in toe of bluff setbacks. And we've struggled even getting within 20 feet, you know, and allowing decks and things being built in those areas. And I'm a firm believer you can build something any place. You can build it in swamps on stilts, you can build it on the side of mountains, it's been done. But we have an ordinance, and that's what we're here to decide on, if it's in our ordinance, if we can find a practical difficulty to do that. And when this lot was done in 87, when it was split off, we didn't have the ordinance, but the laws have changed. This lot should have been owned in common, in my opinion. With the two side lots, it shouldn't be a single lot. It should have been split off or kept to being owned in common or something like that, because as our ordinance is now, I can't go along with it either.
Thank you, Dan. I have a different take on this altogether. I think it's similar to what Dan was trying to allude to, is both of you are absolutely right. I think, you know, we don't build in bluffs. This is a good example. We're in it, we're not near it, everything. But if we look at the intent of what the DNR bluff rules are for, it's to keep the native plant material, keep that soil stable, to make sure that it doesn't break down, doesn't go into the lake. And when I was on that site, I saw a disaster. I mean, that is not the original. That area has been excavated. That soil has been disturbed. The plants that are there are weeds. There's no native sedges or hedges. There's really not much right now to even hold that. It's a recipe for a disaster down the line. So the question is, if we're gonna look at the intent here of preserving and protecting this thing, I think it's the best way that we can do this is to put in measures into this variance request that would give us that protection and help stabilize that bluff. Doing nothing, we're just, you know, no one's gonna fix it then. There's no incentive. There's no reason to fix it. As far as, I looked at the drainage issue a little bit different. As far as I was thinking the same thing. If you look at the contour, there's a little valley that goes in here. To me, the layout is such where we're really far back from the lake. So that gives us a buffer. We also have the topography kind of working a little bit where that swale does allow for some robust stormwater management plan to be instilled there. What I would like to see is what Dan said is, if we could remove that third garage stall, push that building back further, as far as you can, have an engineer design a rainfall system to handle a 1-inch rainfall, which, by the way, would also benefit the neighbor. If you remember that all that neighboring property kind of also goes in there. So we're really improving the water quality and the stability of that soil. So I'd like to see that, so that it can be done, first of all. And the second thing is a planting plan with soil, with plants that would stabilize that embankment. So the third thing that I would like to see is I like to see that replan, because we are in uncharted areas. We've never done this, but you know, kind of as you alluded to when you applied, one of the first tricks we always hear is, well, you did this variance and this variance, you know, like down the road. And I feel, however, in this case, that there is enough uniqueness in this situation to allow us to build in that bluff because of the benefits that would be gained. So that's my thought. So if you can demonstrate, I would be in favor of of the variance request. I don't know how the others would feel, if that would change your mind at all, but I'll open it up for discussion.
Can I make a statement?
Sure.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying that, you know, like Dan had shared too, you know, the runoff from the road is deteriorating that, you know, the ditch area and stuff. And I think we can do this responsibly, and I have talked to Paul Otto, with Otto Associates, you know, to maybe even start the process of getting, you know, a smart, erosion watershed plan together. I also don't think this would be setting a precedent because it is such a unique thing. This was developed before the statutes were in place. Now, if there's any development on a lake, you know, the statutes are in place. So, you know, you're not gonna have a lot that's, you know, fully in a bluff area. So I believe this is a unique situation. Wright County doesn't have a whole lot of these lots left. You know, I mean, like somebody had mentioned, you know, all the lakeshore in Wright County is almost developed. So I believe this is a unique situation. You know, my client had the understanding that we need to go through the variance process for them to build, and that was the reason for them to purchase it. I also believe this would be an improvement to the neighborhood. I've talked to the neighbors, you know, they don't want this overgrown lot that they're staring at all the time. They would like to see it developed nicely, a nice home going in there. It is an executive lot. The owners are, you know, business owners in Cokato. They want to stay close to Cokato. This is their forever home. You know, they're going to be responsible. They want to take care of it. They want to preserve the lake because they will be on the lake. So I believe we can put together, you know, an erosion plan, a watershed plan that would, you know, improve the lot, not just, you know, get by and make things work, but I believe it truly would improve the lot and the lake quality.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I may. I think you're right on a lot of those statements, both you and Paul, and everybody's been right, but the part that's north and west that are in the real close lines there, I was trying to pull them out a little bit somehow. I don't know, with still keeping the integrity of the home. So if you could shift that whole house up and
Sure.
towards the road, and get out of those real close lines, because that's just in that little part there, it's about 7 to 16, it's almost 12 foot of fall.
Sure.
In a small area. I don't know how you can remedy that and still keep the integrity of a bigger home.
Sure.
And then the garage, as built here, would put a lot of water on your neighbor, I think. I mean, it'd take all them trees out to fix the grade.
Sure.
So that's kind of the parts that are sticking me. So that's my statements there. I don't know if you'd want to go back to redesign something that fit in there better, or pull it up toward the road and try to redesign.
Right.
Take that whole section, slide it.
Pull it towards the road a little bit more and
Yeah.
remove that third stall.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I guess where I'm still struggling is, I've been here on this board for several years, and we've had bluff situations like this come up, and I can think of two right in my mind that, you know, they withdrew themselves because they didn't feel it was going to work well. And all the statements being made about being able to build, like I said, I believe you can build anywhere. We have an ordinance that says we're not to build in the bluffs and to protect the lake. And I agree with what you're saying in trying, you know, Paul, with putting something there. But no matter what we do, water's still gonna go downhill. And when we were out there, the township is saying they want to protect it. But Dan and I looked for a culvert in that particular lot. There is not a culvert that comes across the road. The only water that comes across the road is what lands on the road. And the ditch takes the water to the northeast, down to the other house where it goes underneath where that house is being built. I mean, neither one of us found a culvert that goes under the road on that property area. So the only water that's gonna go off that road onto that property is what lands on the road. But we have, still coming back to, we have an ordinance not to build in bluffs. unless we change our ordinance, we're going to get, I guess if I was one of these landowners that we've turned down in the past, I'd be here next week or next month saying, okay, I'll design it and I'll show you where my water is gonna flow. I mean, we're just out on Lake Sylvia, 2 different ones on Lake Sylvia. And they withdrew. And they're basically the same thing as this. They're in a bluff. There's not, a couple of those even had enough room that were outside or, were flat. This particular one, the whole lot is a bluff, meets all the criteria of a bluff. So I guess I'm trying to get through the county part. As far as building it and him redesigning it and stuff, how do we get through as a board our ordinance?
So, purpose, as you stated, the purpose of the ordinance is to protect the waterway. So, right now, and the other thing that's different about the other two is that this is disturbed soil. This is not an ordinary bluff. The other two were bluffs that were protected, and that's the purpose of that ordinance, is to protect that bluff. We're dealing with a situation that doesn't apply. We're dealing with an unstable bluff. And if the intent of the rule is to protect the water, what is the best way to do that? And we have, in my opinion, 2 choices. One, turn down the variance, nothing will happen, and this will just continue to deteriorate. Or B, put in place measures and protection and a plan to restore that bluff and to protect that bluff. That's where I'm coming from. And that's what I think is very unique. So I won't have any problem next month when someone comes and says, I want to build in a bluff. Well, there are really unique things that we're dealing with that we never do. I mean, every bluff inspection we go to, there are, these are undisturbed locations. And for good reasons, we are very careful about what we do. This is a unique situation, and that's where I'm coming from there. So I feel real comfortable with it, but with that said, I can go on. So, any further discussion? If not, can we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the request. There's no way that we can get any, we're supposed to do minimum relief here.
Yeah.
And there's just, this would be total relief, not minimal relief.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second, any discussion?
Could I request that if you guys are going that route, that you guys would actually motion to close the public hearing to further written and oral comment and direct staff to findings based on the discussion?
So noted. Thank you. All right, any further?
I would like to add one more comment. Would you like to redesign it and have a chance to look it over and
Yeah,
think?
could the homeowner come and just make a statement or answer that question? I don't want to speak for him on redesign.
I don't think, from what I'm hearing, there's any room or possibility even to redesign something based on what I'm hearing.
Those two, yeah.
I mean, but step forward if you.
Greg Peterson. I know this isn't supposed to be an emotional meeting or emotional, but we love our county. We love our town. Like Ryan said, we want to build our forever home here. I understand that, yes, we have rules set in place for a reason. As you've mentioned, Paul, this is a unique situation. And we truly believe that we are doing something to preserve the lake, to preserve the land, to better our community, to do what this lot was intended to do. Speaking to the neighbors, I know that they do not want this to be a camper lot. I know they do not want this to be an overgrown lot. I know that they would like to see this developed in a way that we know we can do. Again, I know this isn't supposed to be emotional, but
If we could just, I think the question that was presented was whether or not it could be redesigned. that, if you could just stay focused with that, that'd be great, because
Yep,
really,
I
I
understand.
was supposed to close it for public comment, but based on the question that you had asked.
Sure,
I'm-
and thank you for that opportunity. So yes, I would like the opportunity to be able to redesign it to satisfy any requirements that the board is asking for us to do.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
So, I don't know if that changes anything. We have
Yeah.
a motion, we have a second. I think we need to vote on it first.
Okay.
And take it from there. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. So, all right, I think the next thing is to, motion for denial. Can you help me out with the wording there?
Well, Mr. Chair,
Yep.
the motion was to direct staff to draft findings consistent with the discussion to date, which would imply a denial
Okay.
coming forward at the next meeting. So matter is closed. To further oral and written comment, public hearing is closed in this matter. Staff will present the findings at the next meeting for consideration by the board.
Thank you, counsel. Thank you. Aaron?
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Billy Knutson request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf please step forward and state your first and last name?
Good morning. Bill Knutson.
All right, so this request is located off of Pleasant Avenue Northwest in Southside Township. The property is 0.23 acres, zoned urban rural transition, and located across the road from Lake Marie, which is classified as recreational development. The request is to allow a travel trailer 41.4 feet from the center line of the road as traveled. That was continued from the May 31st meeting so that the township could submit the response form. There hasn't been any update on the proposed request from the perspective of location or anything like that. The variance is still required because you're within that 65-foot setback from the center line of the road. The township did end up getting the stuff submitted to us, and they didn't have an issue with it, and neither did a neighbor.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add to that?
Not right now, no.
Oh, thank you. I'll open it up to the public. Are there any questions, concerns from the public that wish to comment on this at all? I'm not seeing any, so we'll take the conversation up here. Russ, could you get us started, please?
Yeah, that trailer, how long has that been sitting there?
Well, we bought it as is, so I'm guessing, that trailer's, I believe, 2015, so I'm guessing since then.
Well, what I see here is the township, at first they said no, and then they approved it, and they sent a little letter with it, that it's been there for a few years and it's never caused a problem. And somebody more or less complained about it. And I don't really see a problem with where you're sitting, to be honest with you. And that's about all I got to say. I mean, I'm fine with it. I think somebody didn't like what they seen and they turned you in. Sounds pretty rough what I said, but that's what I'm thinking.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
Yeah, we talked about this last month. You know, the only place to get away from, to get back from the the proper setbacks is where your pool and area is there. That stuff is all there already. Maybe it was poor planning before this, not now, so I think I can approve the request.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Yeah, from what we went through last meeting and going through it and where it sits and the township approving of it, and it's been there. And I clarified at the last month's meeting, the stuff that's behind there, the patio and stuff is behind there. If you put the trailer there, then we're gonna get variances on the patio or such. So just for the size of the lot, due to the wet area in the lot, and being able to place it there, and it's been there for a time. Now we just need to get it permitted, and township, like I said, township agrees I can go along with it.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Yeah, that's my main feeling too. The township agreed. I was okay with it before, as long as they agreed, so I still feel that way.
Thank you, Dan. And likewise, I don't have any issues with it. With that said, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to allow the travel trailer 41.4 feet from the center line of the road and site plan noted as Exhibit A.
Here a second?
I will second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All set.
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Brett Bullock request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf step forward and state your first and last name?
Hello, Brett Bullock.
All right, so this request, it is located on an island within Westlake Sylvia, which is general development, and it's located in Southside Township. The property, it is about 2.64 acres, and it is zoned general agriculture. This specific request is to pasture, I believe it's kind of up to 14 goats, which would be up to the water's edge for up to 5 years. A variance is required to pasture up to the water's edge, as there is a 50-foot setback, which can be shown here. The township did approve 12 to 14 goats to be pastured annually up to 90 days for up to 3 years, unless the township received complaints from adjacent property owners. A neighbor asked how goats would control/minimize erosion with less plants on the ground, and how would goats eat the desired native species be stabilizing the shore. They also noted that goat urine and manure washing into the lake is yuck. Another neighbor opposed the request because they could fence 50 feet from the water's edge. Another neighbor opposed the request because there is, or they consider this to be like the one or only remaining natural parcel left, and the goats would eat all the undergrowth. And then they said, "What's next?" Anyways, that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add?
There's a lot of buckthorn and poison ivy out there, and that's why we want to put the goats out there to knock that down and put more grasses and things out there that we can go out there and use it and picnic and enjoy it.
Okay. With that said,
Yep.
nothing else? Okay.
Nope.
Okay. I'll open it up to the public. Anyone in the public have any questions, concerns? If you could just step aside, and if you could step forward, state your name, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Lisa Peary. My husband and I have a home to the north of the island, kind of in that little bay. I personally don't have a problem with the goats. Another neighbor has used them. They clean up the undergrowth, but they don't get rid of everything. They just clean up everything to a certain point. But we've never had a problem with the goats. I don't see a problem with the goats on the island either. I think Brett might have more of a problem with people wanting to use the island more, because people do stop on the rock reefs on either end, but I'll let Brett deal with that. That's not my problem. But otherwise, I don't have a problem with the goats. I think they'll clean it up and get rid of all the buckthorn, because we do have problems with it out there.
Thank you. Is there anybody else have anything they wish to add, comment on? Seeing that, we'll take the conversation up here, and I think, Bob, can you get this started?
This is new for me. So I have lots of questions. Obviously, you're the owner of that island
Correct.
solely?
I and my wife, yes.
Yeah, okay, so no other people?
No.
Okay. What does the Lake Association say about this?
I didn't ask them. We went to Southside Township and they approved of it. They had no problem with it.
Because I know there's a pretty active lake association there on Lake Sylvia.
Yep.
And I would certainly think that they would have some comment, pro or con. I'm just shocked that I don't see a comment from the Lake Association. Have you done this before?
And I have not.
Okay.
These are rental goats, so it's a company that does this for a lot of entities, and they came out and looked at it and thought it would be a good application for their
to do it on.
And how
So I'm
many,
going by their recommendations.
sure, and I've read some of that stuff here. So how many days and what
They're
months?
telling me they think it would be 60 days, but they would like a 90-day window. Just, obviously, they don't want their goats out there any longer than they think they need to be. So they said they put cameras out there and they'll watch it and they'll check on them and they kind of monitor the whole thing. And when they've eaten what they need to eat, they'll take the goats off.
So is there other feed that's provided for them, or
No,
is it just
it's
what they
just-
forage?
They just forage.
Okay, okay. Then, does other people ever use this island for camping or?
I just purchased it, so it hasn't been in the past. It's very overgrown right now, so.
Okay, okay. Is the shoreline steep, rocky, sandy? Is it-
Mostly rocky. It's a pretty rocky lake, so.
Yeah, okay. Because, when we look at steep slopes, would the animals erode dirt toward the water?
I don't believe so. I mean, like I said, I'm going by the goat. Apparently, they use these goats all over the state, and that's what they're recommending to me.
Yeah, yeah. And, goats are small, and there's only, we're up to 14. So there isn't very many, but it still could, I mean, we've had a rainy period now. It's, let's see. So how much of the vegetation are you expecting to remove? Are you expecting to remove a quarter of it, half of it, 10%?
I honestly don't know. They said they'll eat. Obviously, I want the poison ivy and the buckthorn eaten away, and that they're going to determine when they're going to take them off. So.
Okay. Is there going to be seeding or
Yeah, I would like-
after they're gone?
Right, I would like to plant natural grasses and stuff out there so that we can go out there and picnic and do things, and
Okay. I assume there's mature trees?
lots of them.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I see your request is for 5 years and the township approved up to 90 days up to 3 years.
Correct.
You're okay with the 3 years?
Yes, I am.
I think I'll pass it on.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Dan?
Yeah. I guess I really don't have a real big issue with it. I look at it, 12 or 14 goats, put a few deer out there. They can go right up to the water's edge and do their yuck in the water too. I mean, and I've looked into this goats for cleaning up buckthorn. Buckthorn's an invasive species and it is a real nightmare around the state of Minnesota and Wright County especially. I've got it real bad. And you fight it and you fight it and you just don't get ahead of it. And I know goats, they've talked about goats coming in and, by doing it for so many years and keeping it eaten off, that it helps to back it off. I'm not saying it'll make it totally eradicated, but it does back it off significantly. So, and grew up on a lake. Cattle used to go into the lake and drink out of the lake. The lake is still there and it's still a clean lake. So I guess I don't have a problem with 12 or 14 goats around the water's edge. Fish make messes in lakes too, so, and other animals. So I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Yeah, I'm pretty much okay, other than the topography shows it's pretty steep. It looks like about a 32 foot from the highest to the lowest, or 30 feet.
Okay.
Are we worried about erosion or anything? Is it gonna get right down to the dirt, or do they eat?
I mean, I don't honestly know, but there too, I mean, I will see that and we can take them off at any point, and that's kind of what the township said, if there's something about it, that if we agree, and I said, sure, if something causes,
A lot of erosion.
I mean, they tell me the state of Minnesota uses them and the DNR use them all over, so I'm not an expert on it, so I don't, I'm going by recommendations that I've gotten.
How wide is that island roughly?
I don't even know, do you know, Aaron?
100 feet?
I honestly have not been out there because it's that thick and either I need to do it with goats or with chemicals or somehow I need to kill some of this stuff, so
I like the idea, it's just, that's just. when
Right, and
it
it's the
popped in, I was like,
most-
erosion when I was seen as that steep. But,
yeah.
I could probably go along with it as long as you're watching it real close. It starts erosion, you'll stop?
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Dan. Russ?
I'm fine with it too. I've seen the work they've done, goats, and they do, it's fantastic.
Good. That's what they tell me.
Yeah, and I would let them go to the water because they're cleaner than a goose. Because a goose, they'll come on and they'll drop and it's a mess, and they aren't a goose. They're a lot cleaner, and I have no problem with what you're trying to do.
Okay.
Thank you, Russ. Likewise, I've had goats, and I applaud you in this as far as any of the neighbors' concerns. I think the alternative of dumping chemicals and things like that are probably far worse to get the same results. And as far as any sort of native habitat, there is none. It's an invasive species. It dominates over everything. So, I just encourage you as you get rid of this to rebuild wisely and use right, smart plant material, native material to make it better. So it sounds like you will. So I have no issues with the goats. So with that said, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the pasturing of 14 goats to Water's Edge for 3 years at the township's request. I guess I would like to leave it if he needs it for 5 years, that would be available, that he doesn't have to come back here. So what I would put into it, to approve it for 3 years, and if he needs it for 5 years, to go to the township for approval, if we can do that.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I hear a
I'll
second?
second that motion. Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Sir. Aaron?
All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Kathleen Borst request. Can the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf step forward and state your first and last name?
My name is Kathy Bors.
All right, so this request, it is located at 2320 44th Street Southeast in Rockford Township. The property is 25.1 acres, zone general agriculture, and the unpermitted building is located outside of the shoreline and floodplain. In 2014, the board approved a new home on the property that did not meet the access elevation requirements. It was conditioned that in the event of a flood warning, the property must be vacated. Property owner must have a weather radio for warning of flood events, must sign a waiver at the time of permit issuance, noting that they are aware of the risk and the county is not liable for damage or injury. This request is to allow a 24-foot by 30-foot storage building 0.5 feet from the east side property line that was constructed without a permit. A variance is required for a storage building, 0.5 feet from the side property line because 30 feet is required. The township approves the request based on the neighbor to the east being in agreement and a proposed fence along the property line to keep people off the neighbor to the east property. And that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you wish to kind of add to that?
I do. Nothing as fun as a goat voyage or Mr. Bick's mosquito chase. I bought this 2320 44th Street. I bought this acreage from my mom and dad. Elderly. They love living here. And my dad wanted to build a shed, have a shed built to protect his boat, small items, smaller than that, from heavy snow. I I do believe that my dad, albeit, I said, wait a minute. I do believe that he had this built to be desirable or good appearance building, not some old dungy shack. There's some pictures of Dad's shed. The one abut on the very left. And I do believe that my dad had this built with respect to a property line to the east, And I do believe with all my heart that my dad had this built so that, if you see that pretty red building is the one that Dad had built, with respect to the borders, the east wall of these sheds that, I don't know the existence or the birth of these existing sheds, quite a while, 20, 30, I don't know. But he meant no ill harm by having this built. But my dad's an old scratch that. He's an old fella. That old fella thinking and wasn't thinking, basically. He wasn't thinking. He had this put up and did not pull a permit. He didn't pull a permit on this shed. I shoulder that responsibility because my name's on this. So I appreciate your time, and it's been quite an evolving situation, and I do not intend to break any rules, break any laws. Never my intent to break laws here. But it is what it is, and a building was put up with no permit, so. And that's wrong. And I'll do whatever you suggest here. I think that pretty much wraps it up.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Mom's in the hospital and my son is flooding. It's always something, you know, but anyway, I appreciate your time.
Thank you. If I can open this up to the public, is there anyone in the public that has anything to say? If the applicant could just step aside and sit down there, and then the public could come forward and state your name, please.
Who I say, Commissioners, Mark Workoff, property adjacent to that one. I totally disagree with what the township had, I guess, basically said was advised, or that I agree to all this. They're under a false premise, being as there's a lot of things that, well, you can see them on the picture. There's a couple of lines that go through that building. It's right up against one building, or my property. There's a line where their property ended, and there's a gap that was in between the two of these properties. That all had to be resolved before we even were able to come here. And I was kind enough to sign that quitclaim deed so they could have that gap, not so that they could have the building. That's what they're thinking. Oh, he signed that and he agrees that they should be able to have that. What they get to have is their non-conforming garage and their driveway, because now they own that land. You know, if you want to go with non-conformances, what's the ruling on non-conforming buildings? Do we know? Do we have a standard on that?
I don't know what you're referring to. There's a lot of different ways something could go.
Well, no,
I guess a quick little overview. The two existing sheds that are listed up here, right, that aren't in red, they're existing, they're non-conforming, there's nothing that can be done. They're on, Mr. Boris's property now. So those could be replaced technically as long as they're on their property. The issue is just strictly related to the building in red. So building in red, you get the property line portion resolved, right? That's taken care of. There was an issue with the overlapping legal descriptions or whatnot. So basically the newer garage that was built without a permit. Had they spoken with our office, we would have said, hey, just make sure you keep it 30 feet off the property line and get your proper permit, right? So because no permit was obtained, building was constructed, it ended up being 0.5 feet at its closest point to the established property line at this point. So that is where the variance is in place, or the request is in front of us for.
And you're saying the non-conforming buildings can be rebuilt forever?
Technically, if
What
they're
does that mean?
grandfathered in, I mean, they still have to meet other requirements. We'd verify, elevations outside of floodplain, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot that goes into it.
Well,
But
is there a percentage of value and all that to go with the ability to rebuild one?
depends
before-
on how it comes down as well. So there's a lot of different stuff. If it's destroyed by fire, flood, if it's taken down, intentionally, does it collapse? How long is that period between when it's been kind of destroyed or decommissioned and by the time they apply for permits? So personally, I'd rather not have this conversation spiral down that route because it could get
Well, no, I'm
very
just saying,
technical.
it
So I
just
think it
ends
should
up
be
being that the
focused
building gets to stay
on
there
this building.
forever, basically.
This newer garage is what this is focused on right now. We could definitely have this conversation about the other buildings at a later time. I've got no problem with
Well,
that.
no,
but-
I don't. I'm
Yeah,
just
so this
saying
one
it-
here, if this garage were approved as is, and they decided they wanted to take it down in a year and rebuild it in the exact same footprint, it's grandfathered in that way, and yes, they could then.
Yeah, well, now with the one that, say we approve this, and now the non-conforming building gets to stay there, the same rules apply to that, don't they?
Yes, this newer approved, if it were to be approved garage, would then be non-conforming to that setback. The Board of Adjustment, that's why they're here, they're seeing if the board could approve it to be inside of the setback.
Yeah. See, now the opinion of the board was, what's the difference? What's another building? Oh, that's what's another building. What's to stop and say, well, we can put another building up because the township is gonna just let it go and then, the county will let it go and, or whatever, that's the thinking. So it's like, this has gotta stop. Somewhere somebody's gotta put their foot down and follow the ordinances. Because, well, we'll just put another, how about if I decide to put one up right there? I could do the same thing then, I guess, and it would be okay, but not really, because it doesn't meet setbacks, doesn't follow the ordinance. So I do have an issue with that, and I do have an issue with what the township presented, because what they presented is not what I told them exactly, what I just told you about this, and how they come up with it, I'm agreeing to all this is well beyond me, because I wasn't able to stay for the whole meeting, I had another meeting to go to, so I'm opposed to that building being there, and it can be moved. There's a guy right here in Buffalo that's able to move that building. I contacted him, and he said he could move a building that size. So they could move it from over here, put it over there, and it could be 30 feet away from the property line like it should be. So that's all I got to say. Okay?
Thank you, appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else from the public that has anything they wish to say or add to the? If you could step forward, sir. Oops.
I'm Russell Anderson.
Oh, so if you could just wait up and say your name in the microphone, that'd be helpful.
Russell Anderson. I live in Rockford Township across the swamp or whatever you want to call it. And I went over and looked at this new building, this new shed.
Yep.
And I don't see any problem with the shed, and it's more than a half foot off the line.
Okay.
So I don't see a problem with it myself. Okay?
Okay. All right, thank you for your comments, sir. Any further comments from the public? All right, hearing none. If the applicant could step forward to the podium. And then what we'll do is we'll take this conversation up to here to the board. And Dan, could you get us started?
Yeah. Looking at what we've got going on here, I guess I've got a couple of challenges with it. Is one, we're too close, and we're a half a foot, and I'm not quite comprehending what the township is asking for a fence to be built. You're 5 feet off the property line. How do you even build a fence a half a foot off of the property line? A 6x6 goes an inch over the property line, and then you have boards attached to that. Kind of difficult even to build a fence, that isn't going across the property line. And then you can never work on the back of it because without going on your neighbor's property, you can't put a ladder up against it, you can't paint it, you can't fix the block. Your fence is tied right in tight to it. I mean, there's a lot of challenges here. What the alternative is doing, I mean, I see moving it is a challenge, is not desirable. But there was enough room to build it on the property, you know, outside of the floodplain. The other two were existing. I mean, that was one of my questions and thoughts, you know, the other two are existing, so, and they must have been permitted at one time or something slipped through the cracks. I don't know, but we're dealing with the one in red right now. And to put another one there that close to the property line, I don't know if that's correct, but I'll listen to the rest of the board.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Yeah, I'd like to mention that you beat my mosquito comment with your comment, but anyways, going to the seriousness, I, just reading it, I didn't have the drawing that's being presented right there, I was like, oh boy, this is one part of this job I don't like, because I know Kathy's a good person. Just on the face of it, there's been others that came in to try to get a building in line with another building that was over the lot line, and them did not pass. So, makes it really tough for this one. That being said, there's two there. I don't know if you can make an arrangement with your neighbor to get an easement for it all and put a fence in between the buildings, and then have an agreement to get there to maintain them, would be something I would look into. Otherwise, moving it, but that's a hardship. I know you weren't responsible for any of it.
Dan, Vic, when you said, put a fence between the buildings,
Is that what the township was suggesting?
no, I believe that their fence was more along the lines of, simply putting, I don't mean simply, putting a fence on that property line, on that property line.
Yeah, that would be pretty tough to do.
I get it. I mean, I
Yeah,
agree.
it'd be
Well,
over.
goodness, you could barely weed whip.
Yeah, like Dan said, though, it's 5.5 inches is your post and the boards. You'd be
Yeah.
put the nice side out, so you'd be about an inch over their property line by that. But in between the buildings could be done with some kind of agreement, but I don't know if we're here right now to get agreements drawn up.
You know, I understand.
Or if this is something that could come back. I'd like to hear what you guys got to say.
Thank you, Dan. Russ?
I don't know how to solve it. An easement or something, I mean, I don't know.
You know, Dad's maintained that. If you were to glance, if you were to just glance at,
If we could just stay focused, if they have a question, they'll ask, and just comments, just hold off if you could. Thank you.
That's the only way I know is put, get an easement or move the building. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
When was the new garage built?
November of 23.
So very recent. Very recent.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an unfortunate situation that could be avoided. Is it a pole structure building?
Pardon me?
What kind of structure building? Is it a pole building? Is that what it is?
There's no, yeah, it's a pole building.
Is there concrete inside of it? A cement floor?
Crushed gravel under it. Crushed gravel.
Okay.
No power, no, just a shed, but.
My opinion is then that's a very easily moved building. And I think nowadays you need a permit for anything, at least, and if there was a contractor that built it, you would have thought that the contractor would have insisted on seeing a building permit before they even started. So there's plenty of blame to go around, but in my opinion, the building should be moved.
Thank you, Bob. These are my neighbors, for full disclosure. I know both applicants. I know the neighbor, and I know Kathy well. But With that said, I think it's important that we remember here that the applicant didn't know about the building being constructed with permits. It was her father who had initiated the construction and had started it. I don't believe she acted in bad faith. She is stuck with resolving this problem once it was brought to her attention. I think Aaron Amon will attest that she did what needed to be done, spent quite a bit of time, money, resources to get to this point. And I think also it should be commended that both the neighbor and Kath should be commended to work on that easement as well. So this is not, in my opinion, a whole lot different than something we heard here a few months back, just a mile down the road. If you remember, there was a case in which a widow came before us and her husband had constructed a deck that encroached on the property line and had constructed a canopy of sorts without a permit. And in that particular case, she wanted to sell the house and she was stuck with the problem of getting it fixed. And I feel that this is a very similar case in that she's stuck getting this fixed. So the question before us is, what do we do? Yeah, we could move the building, but if you look at what's already there, I mean, you have two other buildings that are already on the property line. So if you did remove the building, you know, you still have this problem sitting there. And, you know, I feel that if the person had known ahead of time that, you know, then it would be a different story. But I don't believe she acted in bad faith. She's here to clean up. Unfortunately, the person who'd made that decision is not here. So we've closed it for public comments for right now. So with that said, my thoughts are that I would, for me, is to, the person has already paid enough in surveying costs, legal costs. She's going to have to pay double in inspection fees and what have you. So I am in favor of approving the variance request. So with that said, go ahead.
Well, I was just curious if we could hear what the neighbor had to say.
If you'd like to hear what the neighbor has to say, please, yeah.
I would like to.
All right. Kathy, you could just set aside.
Okay. Multiple stories have been told here about how this building was come upon by the applicant, I've heard. I was at the township meeting, and they actually said, we told him not to put that building up, but he did it anyway. Of course, we'll deny that that was ever said, and I'm the only person here besides them that heard that, that's actually here. I've heard, oh, well, when we decided to have that building built at another time, you know, so it's like, what is it? It's not like we're totally innocent here. You know, we're trying to make it sound like the person didn't have any clue as to what was going on. Well, maybe that's true and maybe that's not, because the story keeps changing from what I've heard, personally heard. And you know, go ahead.
May I ask you, would you be willing to sell partial land there, or do you want them to move?
Oh, they asked for that right off the bat. Somebody inquired, well, we'll just buy 30 feet of property. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested in that.
No easement?
Because I was kind enough to sign over the 7 feet of property that borders the whole thing for nothing, you know, so it's like.
I guess I'd rather see neighbors get along.
Well, I would too, but it's like, I don't care about the two buildings that are already there. They've been there since the 30s, you know, so that'll answer the question as to when they got put in. The new one, it's like somebody just went in there and decided they were going to put it wherever they wanted to. They were informed about there was a gap there, that there's a 5 to 7 foot gap. Her father was well made aware of that a number of years ago. So it's not like he didn't know. So he actually built the thing over his property line, across another piece of property, and 6 inches off of mine. That's the issue I have with it. If he'd have put it on his land, I wouldn't care. We wouldn't even be here. If he would have came in and got a permit to begin with, we wouldn't be here right now. You know? I'm trying to be, you know, don't mean to be yelling at you people or anything, but it's just the idea that we have ordinances and we have rules of law, and, then it's great to be a libertarian, be able to do whatever you want with your property. But the thing is people usually do what they shouldn't do, and they don't consider their neighbors. If he would have asked me, I would have told him what he could have done, and it would have been fine. But there was none of that.
But I'm thinking what's before us is the.
Well, yeah,
applicant here.
she's got the problem. She inherited
She
it.
inherited the problem.
That's by blood.
That's
It's not
what
my
we're talking about,
fault.
yeah.
Oh, good Lord. Well, it's not really probably going any different than what I probably thought it would, but it's just the idea that
Right. Is there anything else?
sooner or later, you're gonna have to make the right choice. I mean, Ward Carlson said he could move it for $5,000. He'd roll in there, saw the legs off, move it over, put it in where it should be, and that's it. So we'll just leave it at that. I mean, I know you want me to sit down and you can continue on and I guess do whatever you feel right or makes your conscience feel good. I know nobody wants to be the bad guy. Trust me, I'm on a city council. I know what having to be the bad guy is, and nobody likes doing it. We have some business coming up where I'm probably not going to be real happy with what we have to do, but it has to be done.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Right, with that said, I think we have any further discussion before we put to a motion?
The only thing is that in my position is that if she would have come, her or her father would have come to us and says, well, we want a variance to build this shed a half a foot from the property line, what would this board have said? I think we would have said no.
The fact is he didn't, and he's not here, but the applicant is here trying to fix a problem that somebody else created. That's, so what do we do? What?
But and this isn't easy, but again, if we condone this being done, I'm not gonna get a permit, I'm gonna go do it. Then I'll just come up here and you guys are gonna give it to me. That's the hard part of sitting on this board. It really is, because everybody has to get permits and come down to Wright County to planning and zoning and pull a permit. They didn't pull a permit, and I'm not saying it's not on bad faith, but in it, they built a house there, and if there's any issues, they're supposed to, there was conditions with that variance of building a house. They knew there was variances, and obviously that had to be the father that did these things or had to be involved with those things. I can only assume, but, he knew he was supposed to do certain things if it's flooding and things are happening. So he knew the county existed. And where I struggle with, if it was 7 feet, 8 feet, yeah, I probably wouldn't, maybe go along. We're 5 inches. And they already knew there was a problem because my understanding from what testimony has been, they've already given them a few feet to put the other buildings in compliance. So he had to be involved with that. He had to know. And I don't know, but where I'm going with this, and we can debate it back and forth, put it on the rest of the county. So are we going to pretty much, if anybody builds on the property line and they come in 6 months or a year later and get caught and just pay their double fee, pay their double inspections? I mean, again, what is right, what is wrong for the county?
Not to go back and forth,
Yeah.
but to me, it's a common sense solution. You're right, but there are unique circumstances that would prevent just anybody coming in and doing what you're saying. I mean, we have two parties. We have a person that knowingly, we all agree, made a decision that he shouldn't have made and is wrong, but that person's not here and is not being held accountable for it. But the person that is here trying to come up with a solution and trying to do the right thing. And, we have had people come in here deliberately recorded inquiring with planning and zoning about things, and they went ahead and did it. And we, even in those cases, did not require that building to be torn down. I think we maybe had them tore down part of that lean-to part, but, so, these things do happen, but I feel that, again, this is a unique situation, similar to the one we heard a while ago. And what is the common sense solution, is the common sense solution to require to have that building taken down. I would argue differently. When we look at the location that we're at, we're in a floodplain. Likelihood of it encroaching, any problems, safety issues, access issues, they don't apply. We got 2 other existing buildings here, you know, I mean, yeah, so with that said, so I think I made myself clear.
If I may.
Yep.
I think you make all great points, so do you. The problem is if the neighbor's not happy with it, he's the one that I'd like to appease with the both solutions.
Sure.
The fence, I thought was, he agreed, but apparently he does not agree, so that changes kinda.
So with that said, we have a discussion. Any further discussion, we'll put it up to a motion. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion to relocate the building to meet the setbacks.
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Second? Any-
Mr. Chair, sorry to interject here after the second has already been filed, but in this particular case, given the fact that the board is directing them to meet the setback standards, I actually think a motion for denial would be in order. And then as part of that, we would direct them in the conditions that they need to bring the property into compliance within a set number of days.
Okay, then I'll make the motion to deny the request.
What I'm going to interpret that motion to be is that you're closing the public hearing to further oral and written comment and directing staff to draft findings consistent with denial.
I do.
Second.
All right.
Was there a set number of days, or is that something we would look at?
I guess now that we have discussion, are you looking for a set number of days?
I don't know, 60?
60, okay. Staff can come up with something that maybe is reasonable in talking with the building officials too.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion, comments? None? Here, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Motion carries, so. All right. So you can see Aaron afterwards and he can fill you in on the next steps, what needs to be. Can you fill her in?
All right, okay.
Sure. So essentially what happened is the board, they closed the public hearing portion to any further oral written comment. It's going to be continued to the July 12th meeting. So there hasn't been any formal motion yet for approval or denial, but likely it's going to be based on the discussion, which was for denial. So I guess your options are to, show up at the next meeting and hear what has to be said, being that the public hearing portion has been closed. I mean, anything from, you is kind of taken from a back seat in the audience perspective, and you can listen. Otherwise, if you don't show up, they'll end up mailing whatever the findings happen to be to you.
Okay, July 12th.
July 12th.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
On my birthday, I have nothing else planned. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your time.
Oh. So, it might be easier for you to hear. So I don't know if you caught most of this, but like Cheryl mentioned, there's not gonna be any additional notices sent out saying it's been continued. But basically the whole request is continued till July 12th, where staff will have prepared findings for the board to review prior to the meeting, which they will then discuss and motion on. So if you want, you can show up at the July 12th meeting to hear what the outcome is going to be. Otherwise, you can call us after that meeting as well.
So does that mean they can still do a yay or nay on that?
The Board of Adjustment will review the findings and they can make their decision based on those findings.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, next time on the agenda, we have the Tim McGuire request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf of the request step forward, state your first and last name?
Good morning, I'm Tim McGuire.
All right, so this request, it is located in Rockford Township involving two parcels. Parcels involved are PID 215-000-094-200, which is 45.2 acres, and PID 215-000-094-300, which is 3.5 acres. Both are zoned general agriculture. Some background information was that PID ending in 094-300 was created in 1987. In 2020, what are now PID ending in 094-200 and 094-400 were the same parcel and zoned R2A. They were rezoned from R2A back to general agriculture so that the east side of the road, which is now PID ending in 094-400, could be divided off from the area west of the road and separated, using the road by the Board of Adjustment. And that parcel is the one Riverside with the home allowance. So this proposal would be to move approximately 0.5 acres from PID ending in 094-200 to PID ending in 094-300, and then moving approximately 0.4 acres from PID ending in 094-300 to PID ending in 094-200. It's kind of like a land swap. If the lot line adjustment were approved, the parcel ending in 094-200 would have 300 plus feet of road frontage, but this request would not create any new building eligibilities as part of it. If a home were proposed on PID 094-200, a rezone would still be needed to get out of the general agricultural district into a district that would then allow for an additional home site. The township did approve of the request, and that will wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add?
That was a pretty good overview.
Okay. All right, thank you. I'll open up to the public. Does anyone in the public have a question or a concern or something about the variance request? Okay, seeing none, we'll take this up to the board. Dan?
Yeah, thank you, sir. Do you own both properties now?
No, I own the 45-acre piece.
Okay, so you're selling it to that other property, and then you'll have 420 feet along the
Yeah,
road.
yeah, right now there's 3 access points to the property, but neither of them are 300 feet.
Okay. Yeah, other than that, it looks like it makes sense to me. So,
Thank you, Dan. Russ?
So there's 420 feet now. You got to explain that again to me.
Well, that's the proposed, right? So
Okay.
if that triangle, if we swap that triangle on the south here for the one on the north, that'll give us 420.
And where your house is set and where?
We don't have a house on this property.
You're going to put a house in, aren't you?
Yeah, someplace. I mean, that's the intent, right? So we understand the next process, if this is approved, is to rezone it back to, I think it was agricultural residential, to be able to build a home in there.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Russ. Bob?
Yeah, I looked at this and while there may not be a hardship of any sort, I do think that this is something I can support.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Yeah, looking at the overhead picture, the triangle that you're gonna add onto the back of 3.6 acres, what are those back there for buildings? Is that just equipment sitting there? Is there a building built back there?
Well, I think maybe right on the line, there might be like a chicken coop or something, and then there's some bees back there, beehives.
So that bigger spot is just a bare area, right on, kind of underneath that, right there? What is that?
Yeah, I think that's a
Just a,
fair area. I'm not,
there's no building there or anything like that?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Yeah, as far as what we're looking at with just lot line adjustments and basically land swaps.
Okay.
You got somebody in the public that would like to speak if you're willing.
Okay.
We're the property owners. I'm just gonna,
Sir, if you could just state your name real quickly.
Dennis Schwecke, we're the property owners that we're swapping with. Just to give the information, it is beehives and a chicken coop back there, just for your information.
Right, thank you.
No other structures back there.
Okay, thank you. Done it, Dan? Well done?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, likewise, I share the same feelings with my cohorts here. I have no issues with it. With that said, can we hear a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the request to add 0.4 acres from PID 215-000-094300 to PID 215-000-094200 and add 0.5 acres from PID 215-000-094200 to PID 215-000-094300, subject to survey and subject to administrative order and recorder's combined form. And we'll make this site sketch Exhibit A.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second it. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next time on the agenda, we have the Brian Mickelson request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf step forward, state your first and last name?
Brian Mickelson.
All right, I'll give an overview quick. So this request, I'll start by, this may be a little confusing because it's kind of if this, then that, and there could be multiple ways to go about it. So just in general, we'll say that the request, it is located at 2195 Cameron Avenue Southeast in Rockford Township. As it sits, the property is 12.2 acres, zoned to agricultural residential, and located across the road from Dean Lake, which is classified as recreational development. In 1992, the property did request a rezone from general agriculture to suburban residential, R2A, but was denied and instead approved to be rezoned to the agricultural residential. In 1995, there was two riparian properties. The PID numbers were 215-118-00-1040 and then ending in 001050. They were declared unbuildable by the Board of Adjustment due to soils and elevation. At that time, they were required to be owned in common with this referenced parcel. That's 12.2 acres. But because of current state statute, which supersedes the Board of Adjustment, the parcel across the road from the riparian properties are not required to be owned in common. So this specific request, though, we've got on the screen this building right here. So this is an existing 4,320 square foot detached building that's 19 feet from the property line. They're looking at if they were to try and do a rezone and subdivision in the future with a line, could be something like this, dependent on zoning district and road frontage. That's all subject to change, but it'd be a newly established rear yard back here. So that would then be a 30-foot rear yard setback, where the building would then be obviously 19 feet, because that's what it is existing. A variance is needed because properties as well that are 5.0 to 9.99 acres, which if they were divided would likely be somewhere between 5 and 9.99. They're unable to exceed 4,000 square feet of detached building coverage, and this one is existing at, once again, 4,320 square feet. If this property were rezoned and subdivided, we would be, once again, changing potential for rear yard, side yards, depending on where accesses are and all that. So this is just based off the best available information that we have currently. The township approves of the request to allow the existing building. Neighbor did not have a problem with the request. And then I kind of lastly wanted to point out that the board should also keep in mind that this proposed boundary road frontage presented, subject to change, depending on the zoning district, depending on what the applicant would potentially request, whether this is approved or not, and whether, they're exceeding coverages or whatever they do with the building. But as it currently sits, those are the two variances that we would know of would be detached building coverage overage and a rear yard setback. So that'll wrap up my overview. If you guys have questions, I'll try my best to answer them based off what we kind of know or what could be going forward.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything you wish to add to that?
Yeah, I think what I'll do here is I'll, more in layman's terms here, just talk a little bit here, guys. But, thank you for that overview. But I think it's important to present information how the variance doesn't affect the neighbors. We've already talked a lot about lakes, Goat Island and Lake Sylvia. You can't do much around a lake without having the neighbors being involved. So the Dean Lake Association is something that I have to deal with sometimes when it comes to, building something. And, if they didn't have a problem with the property being split, I guess I don't know if anybody's here to talk about that, but nobody's got a problem. The Dean Lake Association doesn't have a problem with it being split. And the neighbor to the left there, the neighbor that just bought the 5 acres, what is that number? 205. He's going to be putting a house up right behind the shed there, and he's fine with where the shed is at now. Now you got to remember, this is a permitted shed. I did all this stuff over at the planning and zoning. So it's 300 feet off the lake. It's 100 feet or more off the road, and it has the proper setbacks now. Okay, what I think what they're trying to potentially say is if I split it, that the setback is going to change from side to possibly rear, but I'm just not quite understanding that, being that it's already permitted. So what the hardship is, of course, is in between 5 and 10 acres, I can only have 4,000 square feet. I understand that. I screwed up when I built that building. It should be 60 by 66. It's 60 by 72. So that's the hardship. I either got to tear 6 feet off that barn to appease you guys and then move forward, because my plan is to sell part of that property, whether it's my house or that proposed 7 acres, just to kind of simplify things in my life. So really nothing more than that. It does coincide with Wright County's land use plan. Obviously you can see there's a bunch of neighbors around me that have 5 acres. So any way you cut it, if I do 7 acres and 5 or 6 and 6, whatever it turns into, I'm kind of fitting in with the neighborhood, right now. I'm the oddball now, but if I split it, it's gonna probably look better and fit more into the neighborhood. So I guess I got nothing else to say other than that.
Great, thank you, great job, appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll clear up just that rear yard portion, just because, once again, that could be a little confusing. So as of right now, it was permitted as an agricultural storage building, so it should still be agricultural storage, not personal storage, but
yep.
Let's see here. Basically, your driveway's here for the main structure, which is the home, so your rear yard is going to be opposite of that over here. If you were to put a line anywhere in here, well, now you're entering somewhere here, the opposite's going to be your rear yard, so that's where that does change. But like you said, as of right now, I mean, it is what it is. It's an existing building. It's not a proposed building at this point. So
yeah,
it's got to be dealt with kind of as obviously everything currently sits. And then we did discuss too, this property boundary, being that it's the Board of Adjustment can't establish or can't rezone properties, can't do the subdivision, has to go through a different board, planning commission. You spoke with Josh on that one. That line, I mean, it could be subject to change. And even like you said, right, it could be 6 and 6 or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, whatever
so
happens
just
to
to
be.
establish the right amount of road frontages and all that. So that's where I will leave that portion.
All right, thank you, Aaron, thank you. I'll open it up to the public. With any questions, concerns? Anybody there? Okay, seeing none, we'll take the conversation up here, and I think, Bob?
I can start. Let's start with the proposed overage. It's 320 square feet that he'd be over on an existing building that was put up when it was that was compliant. So the only thing that makes that building over would be that if it were if it was rezoned or split off. I'm not sure how I feel about that, except that this was a building that you got a permit for, right? And built it correctly, and everything was done. So now it's because of a change that that it's over. I guess we just approved a deck that was 900 square feet over in impervious surface, and so I guess I'm okay with the 320 feet. And as far as the 19 feet, there again, it's while it might be because of the applicant's desire to split that, we've done, on some of these small lots, we've done, some setbacks that were less than 30 feet. And I think I can go with it too. When you look at the picture, there's some other buildings on the picture that are as close, if not closer, than what this is.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
Aaron, can you clarify, as the property sits right now, is there a building entitlement on it? There's one that the home is on it, but is there a second building
Well,
entitlement
yeah,
on
so
it?
it's ag residential, so
Right.
right, one home allowance on a 10-acre more property, whatever, it got rezoned properly. So as it sits, there's no issue, as far as we're aware, right, based off of this. You're over 10 acres, you've got the road frontage, you've got the depth. You're allowed to have well over 4,000 square feet of detached building coverage when you're over 10 acres. So if you were to then rezone and split, depending on, or whatever the rezone district potentially would allow for, may allow an additional split, which would then give an additional building eligibility.
Okay. And I guess that's what I wanted to clarify to this board. Right now, he's in compliance. He's done everything right. And what he's asking to do is come here if we'll give a variance, if he can split it off, and then he gets another building entitlement, and he gets, we're not supposed to talk about making money. So right now, this property is solely in compliance. Everything has been done correctly on it. And if we allow the 19 feet or the 300 extra feet, then we're now putting in the property as non-conforming, or that building is non-conforming. So, I mean, he's done nothing wrong. He's done everything correctly. He's got to be 15 feet as an ag building off of agricultural land. It's all there. But if we go to work and allow him to be 19 feet and he rezones, now we have a non-conforming building, and we've allowed it. So I kind of struggle with taking something up front and making it non-conforming, because I sit on the planning and zoning board, and if we allow it, it all goes through. I can't speak for what the board will do, but I would assume they would have, possibly allowed or pass it if we do this. So I guess my question is, do we want to create these things knowingly? Because right now, he's conforming. He's got one house on 12 acres. He's got a egg building on it. He's, the other guy wants to build a house there, that's fine. He's conforming. He's 4 feet past the 15 feet that he's supposed to be. He did everything right. Now he just wants to split it off and rezone it and capitalize on monetary. I don't blame him, but we have to do something. So is that the right way to do it or not? That's my question I asked the board. That's my take.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
I'm gonna choose to abstain. I'm related to Brian, so.
Okay, thank you. Yep. Russ?
Kind of a mess. Aaron, what can you do there? Put an easement, or is it just a no?
Yeah, basically the way it sits currently, like Mr. Mole mentioned, there's no problem with the property, right? I mean, as of right
Correct.
now, you want to add another storage building, go for it, right? As long as you
Sure,
meet
what is
setbacks.
it, 65,000 or something?
Yeah,
Like,
over anything over 10 acres, you're pretty much subject to 15% of the building or area of the lot. So I mean, it keeps going up as your acreage gets bigger. I think what Mr. Greniger is referring to, is there anything you can do about it right now to avoid maybe a variance or anything?
Right.
The way I see it, no, there's no way. Well, there's not really a feasible way to maintain the property at 10 acres and still somehow split it, right? Because then they'd have to be in different zoning districts, and I don't speak for planning commission, but I don't know how that would work out. And then you're looking at the side yards or the rear yard setback. As it currently sits where the current access is, I mean, whether you're R2 or the next step down, R2A, 30-foot rear yard setback. The next step down from that, R2, still a 30-foot rear yard setback. So that's gonna be the tough thing. Different zoning district in the property to the northwest a little bit. So I mean, you're not doing land swaps really. I mean, it's, I don't really know personally if there's a way to get around that because I can't speak for how planning commission would act on anything anyways, but had he built the building to size or to 4,000 square feet, he wouldn't need the variance for that. It'd still technically be swapped to a rear yard then, which has the setback for that. So that's what I have. Do you have any additional questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna pass. Bob, go ahead and pass.
Oh, Bob's already talking. It'd be-
Mr. Chair, on a piece of property like this, I mean, we just had discussion on another one. If it's very important to do that, you could disassemble the building, put the building 30 feet off, rezone it, everything meets setbacks. There's nothing else on that property. I don't see anything else that there's a problem. It's the size of the building and it's the setback. So, it all depends what the desire is of the applicant and what he wants to do, but I'm having a challenge with agreeing to something that is totally in compliance right now. We talk about that all the time up here. You can build it someplace and be in compliance. You can do it and be in compliance. He's in compliance. He's done everything right. The applicant has done what he is supposed to do with his property. Now he just wants to change his property and is asking us to put it out of compliance. So I guess that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Dan. Russ, you good?
Is the building screwed or nailed? I mean, you can move it, if you have to.
Can I move that building? No, that's in the footings and everything. Like, guys, this is it. Like, this is the beginning of the end. It don't go past you guys after this. I was just, I just want to get back to like the whole 19-foot thing. If you look at my property, nobody here can tell me what shape that is. All right. So, I mean, if it's 19, it's supposed to be 15, right? Or 10 off the side?
Ag residential at 10 acres like this should be minimum 15 feet from a side
Okay,
yard.
so I don't exactly know, why that would change. Everything's okay. And then you're saying that the line that goes north and south is potentially gonna become the rear setback? Everybody at the township board thought that because of the way the driveways come in and the proposed new property line, that would be the rear setback, okay? So that's way more, I don't know how far that is. That's at least 120 feet of a rear setback, and then it's the 19 setback from the side. I really don't see this whole setback issue. I do know that I'm over on the barn. Yes, I am. I mean, I can't do anything else about that unless you want me to take 6 feet off of it. But I'm not gonna do that. It's too much. It's gonna cost too much.
Thank you. Any further comments? Russ? All right. I look at this a little bit differently. I agree that we are taking something that's conforming into non-conforming. However, I think it's a reasonable request in order to get to the next step. We don't know what that next step, whether it'll pass or fail. But if it were to fail, I see 19 feet as an adequate amount. We've had plenty of people come and ask for a 19-foot side setback. Really don't see an issue. We already know that the neighbor, I don't know if it's the north there, he's agreed, he's building a house. So really all the concerned parties know that this building is there, it's gonna stay, so I really don't have an issue. And breaking it up would, again, create a more conforming 5-acre lots to the area. So I don't have a question. The only thing, just for the record, it is, like you said, we do have an issue. It's not the place for it, but the building is not compliant because it was built oversized. That's the only issue. I just want to point out that it is out of compliance for that reason alone. I'm not advocating reducing the building at all. I think we'll just let it be. So those are my thoughts. With that said, could we hear a motion? I'll make a motion to approve the variance request is regulated in section 155.026, 155.003, B1, and 155.051, F of chapter 155. Title 15, Land Usage, Planning and Zoning Code Ordinance to allow for the existing building to exceed the total detached building area allowed and encroach upon the rear setback of the property area approved for rezone and subdivision. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
So noted. Motion carries. So, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Aaron?
All right, next on the agenda, we have the Platinum Builders LLC. That's Paul Carlson. So, could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf state your first and last name?
Paul Carlson. Good morning, guys.
Morning.
All right, so overview on this property here. The request is located at 3200 Gabler Avenue Northeast in Buffalo Township. Property is 1.03 acres, zoned urban rural transition, and located outside of shoreline jurisdiction. The existing detached building area is 960 square feet. The request is to construct an addition which connects the existing home and detached garage. I'll try and zoom in up here. This portion here. By doing so, and we spoke with our building inspector about that and how they didn't see any issue with it being connected. So in that regard, if it were to be connected, that existing detached garage here would not count towards detached building coverage. And so that currently though is 55 feet from the center line of the road. So if they were to do a connection, that obviously requires the variance. They'd also look at adding a 36 by 48 foot addition to the existing shed. So this total size then would be 2,400 square feet, which would bring the total on the property, if you were to include this shed up here, to about 2,688 square feet. So the variance is needed, once again, because this garage here would be inside of the 65-foot setback from the center line of the road. The single detached building structure maximum in the R1 district based on their property size is 1,400 square feet. So if they combined these two together, that's 2,400. So they're over on that, which requires the variance. And then back to the total detached building area of the 2,688 square feet, because you'd be factoring in the shed to the north, that would then exceed the 2,400 square feet maximum that is allowed for this property size. The township disapproved of the request because there was no representation for the request at the meeting. And a neighbor commented that, I believe they're referring to the south property line. They just wanted to make sure that none of the trees were taken out, accidentally on their property or whatnot, and that the building was the proper distance from the property line, which, based on its proposal, it is meeting the required setbacks. So other than that, they did not have any objections. And that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add?
Yes, so I guess you guys talk about the hardships. Well, he originally bought this property in this home because it's a dome home, it's energy efficient, which also leaves no storage. You couldn't even stand a bookshelf up in the wall because it's all interesting looking walls in there. But the shed in the back that he was talking about add extra, that's gonna go. So that won't be part of it anymore. I guess putting these two together in the back with the new proposed, I mean, we could decrease it by down to 40 instead of 8 and separate them, but then you end up with two buildings instead of one usable building.
Okey-doke. Anything else you'd like to add?
As you see in that one picture, you can see there's some stuff back by the garage. He's trying to avoid that. His wife and him are a military family and they like to race to try to get their minds off of things. And they end up with race parts sitting out and they don't want that to be for their neighbors. So.
Thank you. With that said, I'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public that has anything they wish to add, question, concerns? I'm not seeing anyone. We'll take the conversation up here. And Dan, could you get us started?
Couple of things concern me, but the main one that concerns me right now is the township wasn't able to respond.
Yeah.
That one, I mean, before we get into it, for me, I'd like,
I can meet with them. That's fine.
you know, if you could meet with them. I know we have a couple continued already, but I'd like to hear what the township's got to say.
Yeah. I think we're in agreement with that. I think, yeah. So I think we have a motion to continue this item.
I'll make a motion to continue this item to the July meeting, so that the applicant can meet with the township.
Here a second?
Second.
Second, any discussion? Hearing none, all fair side?
Aye.
Aye.
So it'll be July 12th.
Yeah.
Well, let's just check really quick on that township portion, see when they do have their next meeting. See if that's
Yeah, because I didn't know about the last one. So,
Yeah. Okay.
or I'd have been there.
Let's make sure you can make it.
Okay, it looks like Buffalo Township meets the second Monday, which, based on my calendar, the second Monday of July is going to be the 8th, which would be the week of the Board of Adjustment meetings. So theoretically, if you can get on the township agenda for that, you would have likely a response form for the board by Friday, or the Friday for the 12th.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you.
See you then. Thank you.
Do you need a motion to?
We already did.
Oh, yeah. You have to set a date.
All right, so just checking. I know I heard you guys mention the 12th and everything. Cheryl, did they formally make that motion? Yeah, perfect. Okay. All right. All right, next item on the agenda, we have the Michael Wheeler request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf step forward, state your first and last name?
Good morning. Mike Wheeler.
All right. So this request, we are located at 5220 159th Street Northwest in Clearwater Township. The property is 6.98 acres, zone general agriculture, and located on Rice Lake, which is classified as natural environment. The request is to construct a 14-foot by 16-foot deck onto the existing home. That would be 90.2 feet from the ordinary high water of Rice Lake. Variance is required to construct a deck onto the existing home 90.2 feet from the ordinary high water of a natural environment lake because 200 feet is required. The township approves of the request as it seems minor, is what they put kind of in quotes. So that'll wrap up my overview. I got a picture of the house right there. So, and if I'm not mistaken, right, you're referring to this boarded off piece here for the deck.
What's that?
For the deck, right? It was off this boarded piece here?
Correct. That'll be the access to the deck.
Thank you, Aaron. The applicant have anything wish to add?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, well, I'll open it up to the public. Is there anyone out in the public that has any questions or concerns about this application at all? Seeing none, we'll take the conversation to the board, and Dan.
Okay, thank you. Are you planning on putting any steps on that, or?
No.
No, so just a 14 by 16 pad. We went less than the 200 feet. I'd kind of like to see what the rest of the board has a feeling on. I'm thinking that it fits a deck there, so I'm thinking I'd like to go hear what everyone else has to say.
Thank you, Dan. Russ?
At 200 feet required is a hard one to meet. I would be all right with what you're trying to do.
And I know when, actually, my father-in-law moved this house onto this property in 1980, and I believe it was a 100-foot setback at the time. And
I can't speak for if it had been reclassified or not. I just know that the current classification is natural environment lake, which has the 200-foot setback. So, and the home was built in the 60s, I want to say, or 50s. I think it was maybe the 50s. Let's pull it up really quick. Yeah, 1950. So that would have been predating our zoning ordinances, anyways.
the house was built in the 1950s, but it was moved onto this property in 1980.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there could be some stuff prior. I didn't see anything on there. So let's see, I can maybe find some more information real quick. Oh, 1978. So 1978, let's see what we have here. They would list anything for lake-wise. Building setback from ordinary high water, they gave it 140 feet. So basically, yeah, I mean, it was at that time, I'm gonna guess the survey didn't come back, or there was no verification, so it just got put on. It just kind of was assumed that it was in the right location at that time.
Any other more questions, Russ?
No, I'm done.
Good, thank you. Bob?
Yeah, that's helpful because my first question was, how did you get the house built within the 200 feet to start with? Yeah, if it was there before the ordinance was in place, well, that explains a lot. It certainly looks like it's something that is made for a deck there. If this was a recreational lake, you'd be past your 75 feet. We would even, you would just get a permit and do it.
Right.
But it's, and I've always questioned why the setbacks on a recreational lake is less than it is on an environmental lake. And I've been explained that, I just don't believe it, but that's my problem. Back to your issue, yeah, I think that building a deck on there, the house has been there for a long time. I think that's something that I can improve.
Thank you, Bob. Dan?
I'm okay with it.
And let's see. Dan, so it's me. Okay. Yeah, I'm fine with it too. So I think it's a reasonable request, similar to what the township was. Said. With that said, do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve to construct a 14-foot by 16-foot, 224-foot square deck on the existing home, 90.2 feet from the ordinary high water mark of Rice Lake, which is a natural environmental lake. Site plan noted as Exhibit A, and building plans noted as Exhibit B, and also noted that the township approves.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second it. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, last item on the agenda, we have the Spencer Duran request. Could the applicant or anyone speaking on behalf step forward, say your first and last name?
Jim Doran.
So what we have, all right, so the main property, I guess at hand is located off of 156th Street Northwest, as well as the other two parcels involved. So the main parcel is 216-100-192-404, which is the one highlighted in blue. That's 2.1 acres. PID 216-100-162-100, which is 21.4 acres. and PID 216-100-162-101, which is 17.3 acres. All the properties are zoned wild and scenic and located on or near the Mississippi River. Some notable background information was that PID ending in 192404 was created in 1992 via what's called an entitlement transfer and division through the Board of Adjustment. At that time, the reference property was looked at as having an entitlement, which is technically only something in the general agricultural district, which is what we referred to a few moments prior. It's actually wild and scenic. So in that regard, divisions of the wild and scenic district should follow the subdivision standards set specifically for that zoning district. But because parcel ending in 192404 was approved by the Board of Adjustment in 1992, the zoning administrator would classify this request as a lot line adjustment, which is the reason for the request in front of this board. The proposal would be to add 8.2 acres in total to parcel ending in 192404. Which would come from 162-100 and 162-101. So the new size of parcel ending in 162-404 would be approximately 10.26 acres. If the lot line adjustment were to be approved, there would be no creation, transfer, or loss of building eligibilities. The township, they did approve it as presented. So that'll wrap up my overview.
Thank you, Aaron. Does the applicant have anything wish to add to that?
No.
Okay. With that, I'll open it up to the public. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll take it up here, and I think, Russ, we'll start with you.
Where's the house? You live on that property now?
Yeah, I do, yes.
Or right in there?
Yep, that's the house.
I don't even, I'm gonna have to pass this. I don't understand
Okay.
this.
Thank you, Russ. Bob?
So I'll just ask the question, why?
He just wants to add some acreage to the property.
So what would keep you from being a 10-acre lot instead of a 10.26? Why did you pick that size?
I don't know, I guess that's just the way it panned out.
Yeah, that would be all an approximation there. You'd have to get a surveyor out there, right, because of that, the floodplain area and where the actual bank is. And because this isn't zone general agriculture, there isn't necessarily a maximum of 10. There's no variance for that. It's really just a lot line adjustment to add some land. If I'm not mistaken, all the same family members kind of own, right, all the land that's being
Yes.
referenced here.
Yes.
Right, it's, is it the grandson?
Yeah.
Is just looking at expanding his property. So, you can see it right here within the cursor. That's that one ending in 162-404. They're going to take a little bit from 162-100 and a little bit from 162-101 to get somewhere 10.26 acres. I guess other than adding land to it, what we would see is, as a homeowner benefit, is detached buildings, both being able to maybe place them closer this direction on the screen, as well as your size maximum gets a little bit bigger. Obviously, you go from 2-ish acres to 10. Obviously, you can put more buildings there. But
Okay. Is there tillable land involved?
Tillable. Yeah, I guess, my father-in-law farms the lower part there, you can see to the,
I think that's a lot of the floodplain in here.
yeah, yep, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, and is any of that prime soil?
I can look. It's definitely something you guys can address, but being it's not general agriculture, we've got nothing stating that there's requirements for prime, but I will pull it up because it is something you guys could definitely look at.
Okay. By being over 10 acres, does that increase the animal units?
Well, it's a wild and scenic district. We do have our feedlot administrator here that could definitely address any of those questions that might come up. I don't know if that's any of the intent here, but it is something.
No, it's not the intent.
Well, that might not be your
Right,
intent.
true.
But what about 2 owners from now?
Yeah, that's true.
Those are just some questions that I have.
I would say a majority of that area is technically classified as prime if drained, prime if protected by floodwaters.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I'll move on.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Dan?
Aaron, on this, now, is he limited to the size of building he's on now? So if we increase it to 10 acres, that increases his size of building coverage in the wild and scenic? Do we have,
Yeah, I believe right now they're limited to 2,400 square feet based on their property size. Was it 2.1 acres, 2.1 acre property? Yeah, you're limited to that 2,400 square feet. You go to 2.5, now you're at 2.5 to 4.99 is 3,200. You go 5 to 9.99, that's 4,000. Anything over 10 acres, you know, it's 15%, so they get a lot more. I mean, it would be very tough to fill 15% of this lot up based on all the floodway and all that, but yeah, I mean, they would have the allowance to do so, and I don't know if that was some of the intent behind it, but.
yeah, but by enlarging it, then it takes that restriction off, so then he can have a larger building or whatever. And then where Bob would have been some of my same questions, you know, with livestock. I mean, if we were to do something like this, are you okay with like a half an animal unit per acre? You know, so basically on 10 acres, you only have 5 or 6 horses or a couple steers, you know, just a few steers. I mean, to be able to put those restrictions on it, or,
I don't have a problem with that.
okay. That would be, you know, just so you're aware of it if we do
Yeah,
something like that.
I've got no problem with that.
Okay.
Thank you, Dan. Dan?
Well, I'm pretty strict on tillable. And we decided how much prime tillable is there?
Well, there's a fair amount, but I do want to just point out one last time. It's not general agriculture. It is zoned wild and scenic. And so technically there's no prime soil that's really factored in. There's really just a minimum size for wild and scenic district, and that's 2 acres. There's nothing stating you can't be a 40-acre wild and scenic district property. Right? The 2 adjacent ones that are part of this request are 17 acres and what's the other one? 20 something. 17.3 and 21.4. There we go. Yeah, I mean, so you can have over a certain amount. We wouldn't really factor it in necessarily. Okay. But if I had to calculate it, I can get you a rough number.
Then I also see, like, is that a paved road? That's a gravel road, right?
Where are you looking at?
The road that has all the entrances into that proposed.
Yeah,
property?
that's just gravel road, yep.
So there's 3 entrances into there? Is that anything that we would be concerned of as a board? Would you have to close one of them, or if this goes through?
I gets onto the township there because it's access off of a township road. So
Yeah.
I guess that would be more up to the township
Because I was
for
worried
them to deal with.
and then about leaving the 300 feet too on that other property, because he's got 2 entrances there too. Is that?
But if you make this all one property, those 2 right down there in the middle, now it's his own property.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, before it's to get onto that property and just follow right along the property line, and the other is to access his house. Now, if we put it together, he owns all of those, so I mean, it's kind of his choice whether he uses it or tears it out, or.
Does it make it non-conforming from the red line to the other, or is this line, is that under 300 feet then?
For these, wild and scenic, I believe it's only 200 feet. Let me see here. So I think this is something we looked at
So we
already.
don't have a north here, so.
Yeah,
I'm
lot width that building
assuming
line,
that's
lot width
north
that building
also.
line's only 200 feet. So, you know, you come off the road up into this area here. They just have to maintain 200 feet. I think they're already at that even by the road.
It looks like 200, but I was thinking it was 300.
300. So once again, this is if it's general agriculture.
Okay.
The reason why this is in front of the board isn't the wild and scenic is because there was, I think it was incorrectly divided off as an entitlement division. It should have gone through the wild and scenic subdivision process even at that time. So we're back to the board. We're looking at stuff that it seems similar, but it is a little different than any of these agricultural divisions that we would typically do. So yeah, the division sizes are different. You could have a 20-acre wild and scenic property, and yet you could have 200 feet of frontage versus typically over 5 acres, we'd want to see 300 feet for agricultural properties.
Sure. Okay, then could you do an overview of the whole property? Does that affect much of the tillable? Just, you had a bigger picture there. Could I just see that one more time? The land that you're taking this
Oh, sure.
land from on 621?
So these are the three properties involved here, right? That one, it kind of comes out right out here and then it angles down.
Okay. I would suppose if it's all in the same family, he's gonna still till all that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing's changed in that way.
Okay.
I got 8 children, so there's a lot of family gonna be sticking around, I think, so.
Thank you, Dan. I have a couple questions. Realizing that that is floodplain to farmland, so it's likely that no buildings will be built there, so that makes, helps preserve that. Question I have, though, is to the east. It looks like there's an easement to a large parcel. What is the width of that easement right there, and is that?
We can figure that out here. That is approximately, let's say, 33 to 36 feet in width.
And is that good, high, solid ground to get back in there?
Yes, when you
By
get,
the neighbor too, so I don't know. If you're referring to this little piece. Right here,
Yeah.
Yep, that's the neighbor's property.
Even though it's existing, I was just curious. That's all.
Sure. There's some contours.
No, I guess I'm happy. I think the animal unit question has been addressed for me. The tillable land use has been answered, so I don't have any issues with the request, so. That said, do we hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the request to add 8.2 acres in total from PID 216-100 to -162-100, PID number 216-100-162-101 to PID 216-100-162-404 for a total parcel size of 10.26 acres. Site sketch noted as Exhibit A, subject to survey, subject to administrative order, and 1/2 animal units per acre, and township approves.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second? All
I
in
guess as
favor?
of right now, just point out really quick, you guys already got that motion there. Based on that total acreage, and you guys get your survey right, the lines might shift ever so slightly. I would just make sure, and it's kind of known, we can't create an issue, but just that 200 feet at the building setback line is maintained for parcel ending in 162-100. So,
So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? None? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carries.
Thank you, appreciate it.
And I think the next question is do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.